Coalition Plenary. My name's Tom Carew, better known as the Lame Duck President of the Rural Housing Coalition, as this is my last official function. Yeah. Was that for the lame duck part? Okay. It's great to have you all here. We've got a very nice crowd. I'm going to move through a couple things rather quickly. Senator Heitkamp is expected to be here in just a little bit. So I'd like to introduce to you some new board members. We'll see who's here. These board members were elected yesterday. Toby Best from Homes and Partnership. If you're here, please stand up. John Fowler, People Self-Help. John's here. Well, he was here. Okay. Very good. Neil Gibson, Northwest Regional Housing. Thank you, Neil. David Jackson from Delta Housing Development. Anad Cannon. And Kyle White, Little Dixie. Thank you, Kyle. We also elected a new executive committee yesterday. So when I call your name, if you'd please please stand. So Karen Speakman will be our new president. Karen, are you in the room? Okay. Marty Miller, first vice president. Thank you, Marty. All right. Kathy Tyler, second vice president. Thank you, Kathy. Hope Cupid, secretary.
Hope's right here.
Lee Bolak. Lee is with his daughter who's giving birth to their second child, so he chose to be with her rather than us. I'm good with that. Stan Kiesling. And by virtue of my lame duckness, I'm also going to be on the executive committee for another term. Yay. So I'm going to do a little bit of a pitch about the Rural Housing Coalition. I want to tell you something about our accomplishments, and hopefully that will lead you, if you're not a member of the Rural Housing Coalition, that will encourage you to think about joining this auspicious organization. So last year, we shielded USDA rural housing programs from proposals to deeply cut them and even eliminate critical rural housing programs. We preserved and expanded eligibility under the rural definition. That was a biggie. A biggie and a very complicated. Representative Fortenberry and Representative Hinojosa enacted that legislation. We work with our guest speaker, Senator Heidi Heitkamp, to ensure additional resources for rural communities in the Senate's GSE reform legislation. We advocated for USDA to restore grants for self-help housing organizations after they cut them by 10%, and just recently they restored that 10%, so a win there. We released 2 reports. This morning, the Rural Housing Coalition released its impact report, The Economic and Human Impact of Nonprofits on Rural America. The Rural Housing Coalition surveyed over 100 housing members and community development organizations and found that they boosted rural economies by $380 million and 40,000 jobs. Bob's going to share more of that report later on in the agenda. Rural America's rental housing crisis was the other report we issued, which found that unless Congress and the administration take immediate action, rural communities may lose much of their affordable rental housing stock. We built social media capacity by publishing our third advocacy toolkit to help members develop a social media strategy. We increased grassroots activism by successfully using online petitions, budget bulletins, action alerts, and social media to raise awareness and support for USDA rural housing. Our latest petition was signed by over 1,400 rural housing organizations and advocates. We provided up-to-date analysis of federal budgets, legislation, and policies under consideration before Congress and the administration. So you can see that the Rural Housing Coalition has been hard at work this past year. If you are not a member, please consider joining us in this important work, advocating for affordable housing in rural America. This is the organization that creates legislation, reviews the regulations that impact the work that we do every day, day in and day out. So if you're not a member, we'd like you to join us. This is not an easy task. It takes bucks and it takes people. So we encourage you to visit our website, ruralhousing.org, or like our Facebook page. And in the back of the room, Sarah, outside, we've got brochures where you can sign up and become a member. So thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration of that. So I'm going to introduce Bob Raposo, our Executive Secretary. He's going to give us a legislative update.
Tom, thank you very much, and thanks to HAC for this opportunity to talk about the coalition and talk about what's going on with the Congress and prospects both for this year and for the future. So I wanted to first start my discussion with the outcome of the midterms. And if red is your favorite color, you're in good shape for the next Congress. As you can see, a good part of the country in most rural areas will be represented in the 115th House of the 115th Congress in the House by Republicans, and this I think is an important factor as we can consider our work for the coming year. In the Senate, at the moment, the Democrats can control 55 seats and the Republicans 45 seats. This is the best part of the whole presentation. There's one seat still that's outstanding. That's held by Senator Landrieu, but the Republicans have captured 8 seats. So at the moment, the outlook for the next Congress is that the Senate will have at least 53 Republicans, and if one is to believe the pollsters, probably 54 Republicans. This is a big swing from what we've had in the Senate since 2006. The House was held by the Republicans in this Congress, and they will have a larger majority in the 115th. They will have the largest majority since 1928, the year before Tom was born. So,
you're older than I am.
So we face a Congress that's far different than one we have worked with for quite some time. As you will recall, the Democrats took both houses of Congress in 2006, held the Senate till held the House till 2010, and have now lost the Senate also. So the majority for the next Congress in the Senate is Senator McConnell from Kentucky, who is quite conservative, but who is very anxious, he says, to return the Congress to regular order, to debate bills on the floor, and to pass bills, which is something this past Congress hasn't done much of, or this current Congress hasn't done much of. It's important to note that in terms of the housing and rural development programs run by USDA, Kentucky has always been one of the bigger participants, and we hope that we can use that to our advantage to persuade the Senate to continue to support these important programs. In the House, because the control of the House did not change, most of the people in charge of the committees that have an impact on rural housing will continue to be in their same positions. We have had great support from the House Appropriations Committee led by Hal Rogers. Congressman Cole from Kentucky, from Oklahoma rather, picks up the Labor, Health, and Human Services subcommittee, which is important to farm worker issues, and is someone we've worked with before. So in terms of the people, in terms of what they have done over the last several years, the House does not represent a big change to us in terms of who is going to be making the decisions. We have also had, I should say, great support from Congressman Sam Farr, who is the ranking on the Ag Appropriations Subcommittee in the House. In the Senate, things have changed a good deal, as I said. Thad Cochran, who has a long record of support for rural housing programs, and some of you heard Clanton talk, has also been a very big supporter of farm worker housing, returns as chairman of the Appropriations Committee of the Senate. Either Senator Roy Blunt from Missouri or John Hovins from North Dakota will be the chair of the Ag Appropriations Subcommittee in the Senate. Senator Blunt is someone we have worked with and I think is friendly to these programs. Senator Hovins is in his first term in the Senate, and when the Agriculture Committee in the Senate held a hearing on the confirmation of Lisa Mensa to be undersecretary, Hovins asked a series of questions on the housing programs, not prompted by us, simply because of the shortage that they have in North Dakota because the economy is so good. On Labor HHS, we think that Senator Blunt might be the chairman of that subcommittee. Patty Murray from Washington State is likely to be ranking on that, and I should add that Jeff Merkley from Oregon is likely to be the ranking on the Ag Appropriations Committee in the Senate. The Banking Committee will obviously have a change in the leadership of the committee, as Tim Johnson has retired and Richard Shelby from Alabama takes over the committee. Two Democrats will be leaving the committee, and two Republicans will also be going. One of whom is Tom Coburn, and the country can only be improved with his departure. On the Agriculture Committee of the Senate, Pat Roberts takes over the chairmanship of the committee. He was quite helpful to us on the fight last year on the Farm Bill and the rural definition. Our great and good friend Tom Harkin is retiring from the Senate, and he will be leaving the committee at the end of this month also. So let me turn for a second and talk about where things are with Congress and the continuing resolution and the prospects for fiscal year 15 appropriations. Now, I could say something like your guess is as good as mine on this, or I could say that the warranty on these predictions are good for only 48 hours. You can take your pick. At the moment, and check back in 15 minutes and things will have changed, but at the moment, the House has a plan to take up next week an omnibus appropriation bill similar to the bill that Congress passed in January. And that bill would provide funding for all the cabinet agencies and departments through the end of this fiscal year. With the exception of Homeland Security, which will get a 3-month continuing resolution because of the dispute with the president over immigration policy. Now, you could argue that this is good for the rest of the government and good for us, as I'll talk about in a couple of seconds. I think that this is a showdown that the House Republicans could well lose. It would be a pretty easy argument, I think, for the White House to say that how could the Congress pass a bill which continued all of the other cabinet departments and left Homeland Security, the department that's responsible for the TSA, the Coast Guard, the Secret Service, how could they not give them full funding for the fiscal year? So I think that this is yet to be decided. There were some rumors this morning that the conservatives in the House, which still have some power there, are balking at this deal. They would rather shut the government down than do this, and it could well be that Congress will, in the end, pass a 1-month or 2-month continuing resolution. And we would continue on that probably through the first 3 or 4 months of calendar year 2015. It is very uncertain as to how this is going to go, and the fact that the White House hasn't had a comment, I think, is some indication that they plan to push a bit back on this. Let me talk about, though, what we think the outlines are for the omnibus. Now, I should say at the beginning of this, there's no one in Congress, except possibly Tom Coburn, who has supported the budgets that USDA has had for rural development the last 4 or 5 years. Between 2010 and the 2015 budget request, USDA has proposed to cut $1 billion from spending on the housing programs, the water sewer programs, and the business programs. Now, this isn't the program level. This is the actual, the dollars that Congress spends to provide 502 loans and B&I loans and water sewer loans. So there is nobody in Congress who supports their budgets. And this is in large part because of the good work of the folks down here in calling their senators and their congressmen and telling them how bad this is and how important these programs are to rural communities across the country. So thank you very much for all your good work. It has really paid off. So let me go through some of the particulars now that I've gotten that off of my chest. So on 502 Direct, the budget for USDA for 2015 was, as you can see, quite small. And those conservatives in the House outdid both the White House and the Senate in funding 502 Direct. On self-help housing, it's the same story, where Congress has rejected the budget request And Hal Rogers in particular has been made a believer on self-help housing. And I would say to all of you who have the time or the desire, you probably haven't got the time, but if you can get your senator or your representative to a site, to a self-help housing site, to a multifamily site, to cut a ribbon on a water sewer project, it is well worth doing. Once Rogers saw that self-help site, he was converted. And it is a big thing to get them there. It's a ton of work, but it really pays off because once they see it, they love it. So that's something that if you are inclined to do it, we'd be happy to help. And we certainly think that the payoffs can come. Once again, with regard to water sewer funding, Congress did better than USDA, and that is a tale really throughout the budget. Several of the organizations in this room have been working with the USDA to package and review 502 applications and to try to speed the processing time. There's a provision in the House bill that requires the Rural Housing Service to expand that demonstration. We expect or we think that will be in the conference report. Rental assistance continues to be the largest item in the rural development account, and actually I think the fourth largest in the budget overall. The discretionary budget for USDA is $20 billion or so. So you can see that this account is a big part of that budget, and Congress provided the full level that the department had requested, and the Senate did slightly higher than that. So we expect a good outcome on that also. Because it is such a large item, the rental assistance account has been a point of some debate within the rural housing world. It is certainly the case that it is important to keep that funding going. In the budget this year, the department proposed a series of changes to the operations of the program. For the most part, those were rejected by the Congress, and I expect that the conference report is going to keep pretty much the current policy on the 521 account. Let me turn to next year and make a couple points on this. First of all, you'll recall that the Budget Control Act, which was passed 3 years ago, froze all discretionary funding at the 2012 rate through 2022. That saved a $1 trillion. Part of that bill was to require the Congress either to raise revenue or cut entitlements like food stamps and health care and Social Security to come up with $1 trillion on top of that. And if that failed, if that process failed, then Congress was required to go through with a sequester or an across-the-board cut on the discretionary side. As you will recall further, that in 2013, 13, there was in fact a sequester on both the defense and discretionary and domestic discretionary funding, which was quite hard for both the cabinet agencies, for USDA, and for the housing programs. In January of 2014, Congress reached a budget deal that canceled the sequester for FY14 and FY15. That's why the omnibus that passed in January of last year was a better bill than we had seen in quite some time. Funding for programs was mostly restored. USDA salaries and expense accounts that were really cut to the bone by both the sequester and by other funding decisions in the FY13 bill. That money was restored also. Now, 20 years ago, having to pass an omnibus bill that carried all 13 cabinet agencies in one bill, four months after the end of the fiscal year or the beginning of the fiscal year would have been viewed as a disgrace and a failure. Things are so bad, it was viewed as a great victory. So we are now, as I described at the possible end game for the FY15 bills, which don't have a sequester either. And as you can see on the chart there, the totals for defense and non-defense for FY14, 15, and 16 when the sequester comes back into account. Now, what's important here is that we don't know what the House is going to do, because obviously the House will take up the budget in February of 2015. The House the House Budget Committee, which sets the top line figures, will be led by Congressman Price from Georgia, who's committed to balancing the budget by 2024 without any tax revenue. So we don't know for certain what Congressman Price is going to want to do, but I think we can guess. And that is, for the FY14 budget resolution, before we get to the compromise, the House did in fact pass a budget resolution which took the cap set by the Budget Control Act, and this is what it did. And this is also great. Watch this. So what the House did was to take the sequester, which was totaled $90 billion, and applied that sequester only to the domestic side, and fully funded or greatly added to funding on the defense. Now, you can be certain that the Congress that's coming in is not going to cut defense and is not going to live with a sequester on the defense. So one of the challenges that we face as we go forward is being able to survive in an environment where the top line figure for domestic discretionary, which funds HUD and the DOT and Health and Human Services and Agriculture, where that number is probably not as large as it is today. Now, because the Republicans control the Congress, there is some hope they will act more responsibly than they have in the past, which wouldn't be a very high bar. But the fact is that the challenge we face is to keep with our friends and to continue to push the importance of these programs. But it will be likely a very difficult environment in 2016, which will be a break because it's been so easy the last couple of years. Let me just, before you all jump to the ledge, let me just talk for a second. This graph charts the average conservative voting record of House Republicans as a group. And those red dots are the 12 chairs of the full committee and the appropriations subcommittees in the House. And as you can see, those members, those subcommittee chairs are to the left of the caucus, of the House Republican caucus as a whole, and I think that does give us some hope. There are people we can work with. They are mostly rural, and I think we have to keep them in our focus and keep working on them and keep pushing the points that you all have done so well on in the past. Now, there's something you can do in the short term. Our good friend Congressman Hinojosa has just sent out a dear colleague for a letter to the White House, to the President, asking for better treatment for rural development and rural housing in the FY16 budget. The deadline for that letter is next Monday, and if you have time and you get to the Hill, please get it to your congressman. We have copies in the back on the table, and it would be great to get your support. We did this in 2014. In 2013, we had over 50 House members on. It'd be great to do it at least that well in this Congress, and I think we keep have to keep pushing on the White House and on the President and on the Department to do better. So, questions on that? Questions on what I've said?
Do you have that electronically? Could be uploaded to the app?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't ask me how it gets done. Yeah. So I think we're expecting Senator Heitkamp any second. So I'm just going to talk for a quick second on some of the outcomes of the impact report that Tom had talked about. And I want to thank all of those who took the time to participate, to fill out the form, and also to the board, the members of the coalition who some of whom are here, who took the time to work with us on the case studies. This is the second one of these that we've done. We find it very, very helpful in terms of explaining to members of the House and the Senate what these programs do, what community development organizations do. It's important to note that the vast majority of the House and the Senate have been in Congress for less than 3 terms. So this isn't like the good old days when the chairman of the Agriculture Appropriations Committee and the House have been in the chair for 40 years. Most of these members have been in Congress less than 6 years. They know very little of the way that government operates, and they don't understand particularly well what the programs do in the field. So these kind of publications, as well as the work that you can do in going up to the Hill, talking to your senators and representatives and getting them to the field is very important. So as Tom said, the outcomes are pretty good in terms of the housing units, the dollars that have gone to communities, and the community facilities that have been built. It is interesting to note, and it shows that the changing world we are in, that while USDA is an important source of funding for home ownership, it's not nearly the only source. As all of you have done a great job in finding other tools to provide home ownership assistance to families. It is also, I was surprised by this, that new construction, at least for the people that we heard from, is not the principal activity for work by community development organizations, by rural housing organizations in getting people into homes. That there is much more on the existing side and the rehab side. And finally, in terms of rental housing, we did a report earlier this year for some California organizations which showed that the tax credit, that LIHTC was the most important source of capital or financing for multifamily housing in small communities, and this survey certainly bore that out as the case. One of the aspects or one of the consequences of the demise of Section 515 is in fact that less tax credit funding gets to small communities on a proportionate share than in past years, but it is still by far the biggest source of capital for multifamily development. So let me pause there. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, and thank you again for this opportunity. Yes, Dave.
Any projections on the status of the extenders? Obviously, it
Right.
the tax credit.
The permanent 9%, right.
Part of the
Right.
multifamily.
So as you probably have read, there is a tax bill that is trying to work its way through Congress. That bill is going to be on the floor today, a vote probably about 6 o'clock. That would provide a one-year extension for all the credits that expired on December 31st, 2013. It would be retroactive to 2014. That bill, I think, is pretty certain to pass the House. The White House has said it is for it. The Senate, at least the Finance Committee chairman, is holding out for something more due to his liking. It is unclear he's going to get that. It is interesting that the package that was being discussed last week before Thanksgiving was a package of $450 billion, which would have provided a permanent extension for business for various business tax credits, as well as a 2-year for the LIHTC permanent 9% credit, and the NMTC. We were all surprised. I was surprised that the White House pushed back pretty hard on that bill because it did not provide the provisions that they were seeking with regard to child care tax credit, for example, and issued a veto threat, and that bill just collapsed. It's going to be interesting to see on the omnibus where there's a provision they object to very strongly on, with regard to Homeland Security, whether that's the same outcome. But I think with regard to the tax bill, I think the likely outcome is that the bill that the House passes today gets passed by the Senate late next week and gets signed. So, other comments or questions? Well, yes. 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 For 2014 only, though. It's, I know it's hard to believe that Congress would do something like this, but that extension expired on December 31st, 2013. So the legislation that Congress is going to pass for the 9%, as well as lots of other things, will be retroactive to 2014 only. Now that you're all confused. So, other questions? Well, thank you very much. All right. So what we'd like to do is we have 4 members of the board of the coalition who participated in the case studies that we have in our report, and so we are going to ask them each to briefly talk about their projects. We expect Senator Heitkamp any second, and when she comes, we'll pause, we'll let Senator Heitkamp speak, and we'll finish. So I first want to ask Mitzi Barker to talk about her project. I believe we have a slide that's going to pop up here. But I have to do something.
There we are.
There it is. Mitzi?
Thank you, Bob. My name is Mitzi Barker. I'm the director of the Planning and Construction Division of an organization known as the Rural Alaska Community Action Program. We're a CAP agency. We're based in Anchorage with a statewide service area. We've been in existence for 50 years. We've only been in the self-help housing business for 8 years. And we actually seeded our program with an RHED grant from HUD, which eventually, after a couple of years, put us in position to be a 523 grant recipient. We are starting, basically as I speak, our 50th home. Yes, we're in Alaska. Yes, it's November, and we are just starting, which says something about how long it takes sometimes for RD to get around to doing our loan obligations and approvals. But be that as it may, I really want to talk about Maggie Winston, the person who you see here. The reason we do this program is because we're all about building homes, which build families, which build communities and tax base. And in Maggie's case, this was an exceptional opportunity to provide a family with a home of their own that was fully accessible and custom tailored to her individual need. Maggie has quadriplegia. She uses a motorized wheelchair. It isn't very obvious from the photo here, and it's not something she likes to draw a lot of attention to. But Maggie and her 2 children were living in a group home in the Central Peninsula area of the Kenai Peninsula because there wasn't any accessible housing available to her. She learned about our program from Frontier Community Services, the independent living center there. So why don't you give it a try? Well, Maggie had all the ingredients. She had a lot of gumption. She had excellent credit. She had some ability to repay based on her Social Security payments she receives from her disability. What she didn't have was the physical ability to actually build her home. And what I want to do, because I see them sitting here, is I want to give a shout out to our friends from the Rural Community Assistance Corp who helped us figure out how to do this right. Because as a new grantee, this was new territory for us. Working with our homebuyer group, we were able to, through the homebuyer agreement, have the group come to an agreement that they were okay with other people taking on Maggie's volunteer obligation for her labor hours. Her volunteers all signed a formal commitment, and they were the most reliable members of the whole team. They were there every time they said they would and actively working on her home. Maggie did the tasks that she was able to do. She did some administrative things. Working with her boys, they actually did some child care, helped care for some of the other families' children while they were out building the homes. And she did some administrative tasks, and she did some phone work, things that she was able to do from her chair. And just about last Thanksgiving, she was able to move into her new home. Her home is 100% accessible, but doesn't just meet cookie cutter out of the box ADA requirements. It was custom tailored to her specific needs. For instance, she needed to be able to have a ramp in her garage, but we didn't have to have the same slope and rise that you would to meet ADA because she has a high-powered wheelchair that, guess what, has enough guts to get through snow. So we could have a little steeper ramp. Her housing costs are affordable. She's actually paying less for her housing than she was in the group home. And most importantly, she has a safe and secure home that's going to be hers, be fully accessible for as long as she wants to remain there. Just finally, kind of on the financial end, the sources that we put together to do this, we can't begin to reach our 40% goal for very low income without funds from other sources. So we had home funds from the state of Alaska. We had SHOP funds from the Housing Assistance Council, thank you. And by putting these three things together, we were all pleased to be able to celebrate that Maggie Winston and her family be celebrating their second Christmas this month in their new home.
Okay. Let me turn to Selvin McGahee.
Okay. I'm Selvin McGahee, Executive Director of Florida Nonprofit Housing. We're located in Sebring, Florida, dead center of the state there. And my organization has kind of a unique history. We're the successor organization to American Friends Service Committee, one of their efforts in the early 70s. They came to Florida to develop farm worker housing. And they started with developing some groups and getting some groups established with self-help housing in the early 70s. In 1978, they formed Florida Nonprofit Housing to take over this mission. And over the past 36 years, we've expanded the service area. We continue to pretty much keep the mission the same, but we primarily focus on two programs. We're regional technical assistance providers for the self-help housing program in the Southeast, and we also provide assistance to groups developing rental housing for farm workers. We're one of the consortium leaders for the Department of Labor funding for farm worker housing as well. But over our history, over those 36 years, we've expanded from Florida to cover several states throughout the Southeast, states of Alabama, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and Puerto Rico are all in our service area for the various programs that we do. During that time, our efforts have helped to create over 7,800 units of affordable housing, assisting approximately 25,000 family members. And a little over $400 million in construction dollars have gone into those efforts. The success story that I want to talk a little bit about is one that was born as a result of the hurricanes that devastated Florida in 2004. Hurricane Charlie was probably the biggest one that came through. I think we had about 3 or 4 hurricanes to hit us that season. But Hurricane Charlie devastated an area in central Florida called Arcadia, DeSoto County, Florida. We received a visit from the Catholic Charities Diocese of Venice, which was nearby in Sarasota, Florida, to that area. But they wanted to really help address the devastation of farm worker housing in that community. When some of my staff and I toured the area, we saw mobile homes up in trees from some of the devastation. And it was a very horrific scene there. But Sister Kathy Bustier, who is in that picture, she was the catalyst behind this effort. And through her efforts, they put together a package that took several years to actually pull it all together, all of the pieces together. But they successfully completed 53 units, 3 and 4 bedroom, 2 bath, single-family units, designed to withstand winds exceeding 200 miles per hour, and they, at a cost of about $10 million. But with USDA funding from their Farm Labor Housing Program, HUD Home Funds, the state of Florida, some of their housing programs, Catholic Charities contributed, as well as some other private donations. This effort was successful, and I think they now have a phase 2 that they're putting together for this program. But it was a very successful effort and a prime example of the kind of thing that we are very proud to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Selvin. So Senator Heitkamp is with us, and I'm going to introduce Twyla Martin Kikaba. Twyla is going to introduce the senator to you. Twyla's had a distinguished career breaking down barriers and serving rural and American Indian families in North Dakota and across the nation. Notably, Twyla was the first woman to serve as head of the tribal government for the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. She served as administrator, president of the Turtle Mountain Community College, and was involved in the development of the American Indian Higher Education Consortium. Twyla also has served as a policy analyst for the National Indian Health Board, director of the Tribal Analytic Institute at the United Tribes Technical College, and a community liaison for the Northwest Area Foundation, working to help communities reduce poverty across 8 states. Over her career, Twyla has been recognized for her leadership. She's served as the president of the board of the Housing Assistance Council, as well as the Rural Development Leadership Network. Please welcome Twyla Martin Kikaba.
Bonjour, hello. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time because we're obviously working with Senator Heitkamp, who, believe it or not, is operating on Indian time. Senator Heidi Heitkamp, Democrat in North Dakota, has served in the U.S. Senate since January 2013 and currently serves on the Senate Committee on Agricultural and Banking. This year, Senator Heitkamp helped introduce comprehensive legislation to reform America's housing finance system. With a bipartisan group of senators, she helped craft a bill that aims to protect taxpayers from future economic downturns while preserving the availability of the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage for home buyers. Within the legislation, Senator Heitkamp made sure federally recognized tribes and tribal entities were full participants in the Housing Trust Fund, and that there were coordination with Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act of 1996, or NAHASDA, and that the housing needs of American Indians were fully recognized. Senator Heitkamp is one of those individuals, you know, that in my estimation serves the vulnerable, especially in rural areas. And above all else, I can honestly say that she is a true friend. I believe she should not be in Congress, that she should be serving on the HAC board and the National Rural Housing Coalition board. But welcome, my good friend, Senator Heitkamp.
Good to see you. I do have to take issue, Twyla, with your comment about me being on Indian time. I was waiting for the president who I wasn't able to actually hear the president's speech over at the tribal summit. It was the president who was on Indian time, not me. But I want to start out by telling you that housing in the United States of America is 20 to 25% of our economy. You think about that. You know, when you add it up with healthcare, that's about 50% of what we do in the United States of America. And why shouldn't we? Because everything that we are and everything that we believe about ourselves is what we find in our homes and what we find in our communities. And so where we talk about housing as an economic engine, and we talk about the significance of supporting housing and affordable housing for quality workforce, what we're really talking about is what Twyla just mentioned, and that's about homes. Homes for people. Homes for our citizens. Places where people find refuge. We have, and I imagine that Twyla is doing some great work here educating you of the challenges that we have all across Indian country in my state in housing. 14, 15, 16 people living in a 2-bedroom home by grandma, a house that was never intended to have more than 4 people. Black mold on the walls. Health conditions that would be condemned in any city in America. But yet, Native people, in particular Native children in our country, live in these homes because it's all they have. And if we take those homes away, they have nothing. They are homeless, absolutely homeless. And so we have a great passion in my office for housing issues as they relate to Indian country in the state of North Dakota. It is the most acute housing shortages that we have. Now, to give you an idea of what's happening in North Dakota, some of you may read in the papers about this great economic boom that we have in our state. You may see some of the bad side of it if you read the New York Times, or if you read watch CNN or any of the national networks who have been out to do stories. But I will tell you that right now, the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency, an agency that I used to help head up when I was a member of the Industrial Commission, North Dakota Housing Finance Agency tells us that we need a 30% growth in housing in North Dakota. Think about that. In the next 10 years, we need to grow our housing stock by 30%. And when people come to my office, builders and people who are involved in housing, and say, we want to participate in this great economic boom, we can build, I say, can you build me a house for $160,000? And they say, no, ma'am, we can't. We'd be willing to build a $500,000 house. And I say, that's not particularly helpful. And can you build me an apartment that you could rent for $500 to $700, a 2-bedroom apartment that you can rent for $500 to $700? They say, no, that's not what we're going to build. We're going to build an apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, same apartment, only we're going to rent that apartment for $2,500 a month. $2,500 a month in Williston, North Dakota. Rents that would make a New York landlord blush. And so you wonder why we've taken an active role, me and my office, in housing and housing challenges, because there's no greater housing challenge in America than in Indian country and in rural America and in North Dakota. And so what does this mean, and where are we at with all these programs, and where are we at with a national commitment to affordable housing, housing for working men and women? You know, we just went through a devastating, absolutely devastating from my party's standpoint, election. Right? Nine seats changed hands in the United States Senate. And I will tell you, when my colleagues asked me, why did this happen? I said, because we did not offer solutions for men and women who work in this country. They are struggling, and they're getting further behind. They're paying more for their housing. They can't afford a mortgage. They can't get a mortgage because of the new mortgage standards. Never before in the history of mortgage lending have we had a greater crisis in mortgage lending. But yet, groups that talk about affordable housing aren't necessarily at the table talking about what we need to do to reform this system. How many of you think that a working person can afford a 20% down payment for a mortgage? How many of you think that we can afford lot costs in your community if we're going to do new green space at $100,000 a lot? That's not affordable housing. That's not what we're going to do, and that's not going to be the focus. And I have a tendency, I think, sometimes to really focus on single-family housing. I do that because I think that's what builds communities. I think that there's a lot of value in multifamily. There's a lot of important housing that happens in multifamily, but our goal should be transitional for multifamily. It should be to move families into homes that they can raise their children and build their community and make a difference and have ownership of, so that they can have that American dream. What do you think is going to happen to the next generation of Americans who can't afford their homes when they age out of the system at 65 or 70 years old? You know, the true secret is we have a lot of retirement right now where you can make it. You can make it on Social Security, that money that you get from Social Security, because you own your home. Your embedded housing costs are taken care of, right? You own that home and you have equity in that home. That home has value. What happens when we have all of the money spent and you don't have any equity? You don't have any ownership. And what does that mean for your retirement? And what does that mean for the future of America? These are real economic problems that need to be solved. And I have a unique role. I always tell people say, what do you do in the United States Senate? I said, I'm pretty sure I am the only person who gets up every morning and thinks about rural America. Give you an idea why I do that. I grew up in a small town of 90 people. My family was 1/10 the population. You can't get any more rural than that, can you? And we had 5 girls in 1 bedroom. That's how I grew up. 5 girls in 1 bedroom. Gratefully, I was not the size of any of my sisters who used to tear out each other's hair when they were all stealing each other's clothes. You know? But we somehow made it. And we made it because we were part of a community. And we owned our home. And we worked and we took care of each other. And when you don't have that, and you don't have that connection, and even in rural America, when you don't have that connection, you lose focus, and you lose something of what we hope to be in terms of rural communities in rural America. So what are the unique challenges for rural America? I just want to run through some of the priorities here. Just to give you a sense, and it's probably stuff you already know, obviously, or you wouldn't be here. But virtually all water and wastewater systems out of compliance with federal standards are located where? In rural America. Poverty rates in rural America, 17.7%, are higher than urban areas at 14.5% and more concentrated. In fact, 82% of high poverty counties, or 571 of the 700 counties with at least 20% poverty rate, are rural. The number of high poverty rural counties has grown by 30% since 2000. The impact of the recession, as well as high poverty rates, has had a clearly negative impact on rural communities, reducing home ownership opportunities and curbing economic growth. Yet, despite this distress, recent USDA budget requests have proposed substantial reductions to the very housing and community development programs designed to improve the quality and the amount of housing in rural communities. I think that we made rural housing a priority because we didn't think a lot of people would, right? You know, and I have to tell this story because Twyla's here, but I remember sitting on, and most of you know I'm on the Banking and Housing Committee, and I remember where they were talking about affordable housing, and they were talking about, you know, what you would expect, urban city mainly, you know, things that you would see maybe in projects or housing projects in urban settings, and talking about affordable housing. And finally I said, well, can one of you tell me what your organization is doing for housing on the reservation for Indian people? And literally, there was a panel like this, they literally all kind of sat looking forward and then kind of went, like, who's going to take that one? And then this woman said, well, you know, we're working with urban Indians. I said, that wasn't the question. I said, the question is, what are you doing for rural housing, and what are you doing for Indian housing in Indian country, in rural communities. We can't get left behind. That's really the message. Now, my role is really dual in this area because I not only sit on the Banking and Housing Committee, where I deal every day with rural and affordable housing challenges, but I also am chair over, or was chair, I should say, over in the Ag Committee, the Subcommittee on Rural Development. Because we know a lot of those challenges in getting rural housing aren't just about constructing a house. They're about wastewater treatment facilities. They're about rural water. They're about making sure that we have roads and streets and broadband and communication systems into rural communities. And so you have to absolutely collectively use your voice. You have to communicate to your senator. You have to communicate to your representative what those challenges are and how these needs are getting unmet and how people in their 60s and 70s and 80s can no longer go to their church because they can't find health care and they can't find affordable housing in those communities. They can't afford to live in those communities. And so if we are going to turn this around and make sure that our economy recovers in a way that every part of our country is recognized and grows, then we need to speak with one unified voice. And we need to tell the story of the challenges, whether it is acquiring a mortgage, whether it is making sure that we have infrastructure that works, whether it is, in fact, making sure that we have affordable housing for the grandpas and grandmas, as well as the new families that want to live in our rural communities. We have to tell that story because if we don't, we will continue to get what we always got, right? We'll continue to see. I want to close with this thought. I get a lot of questions about reauthorization of NAHASDA, right? What's going to happen? Is NAHASDA going to get reauthorized? I think there's some discussion over in the House, and we have holds on NAHASDA in the Senate for a lot of reasons that are more irrational than rational. And so these are the challenges. But you know what I tell people? If NAHASDA was such a great thing, we should, in fact, be doing better. If NAHASDA was the answer, then why do we have a crisis of housing in Indian country, especially in my state? It can't be the only answer. Do we have to reauthorize it? Absolutely. Do we have to take a look at what the opportunities are within NAHASDA? Absolutely. But it is not our only answer, and we need to bring in the entire community, whether it's the faith-based community. We need to bring in the private investment. We need to bring in the NGOs. We need to bring in all of the housing organizations and say, what is your strategy for addressing a crisis in rural housing today? And until we have that strategy, until we know that it's not just going to be less of the same, not what we're getting, less of the same. If it's not going to be more, and if it's not going to be available, and if it's not going to be predictable, right? If it's not going to be predictable, then we haven't done our jobs. And so I want you to know that I'm passionate about this issue. I believe that at the end of it, it's an economic issue for this country. But more importantly, for all of us, it is homes for our children in rural America. Thank you for letting me come.
Well, thank you, Senator Heitkamp. What an inspiring speech. So we'll pick up on our program, and I don't want to put any pressure on Hope or John, but time's running out. So, and what button do I push? Green one? Go with green. Go green.
Okay. Hello, I'm on. Hello,
Hello, everyone. I'm Hope Cupid with Southeast RCAP, and just want to give you a quick history about our organization. We started in 1969 with a problem dealing with rural water and poverty, with people living without water in rural communities. And so we started a program in Roanoke, which we went to Congress, and it became a national demonstration project, which is known as now the RCAPs. And we help communities across the country with water and wastewater issues, but we also deal with housing. Because if you build a house and you don't have water, does it work? So you need us to keep going, right? So I just want to let you know that the basics of home ownership is having affordable water and septic system to operate and live in the home. We have a lady that we assisted. She lived in her home all her life without running water. She's about 60 years old. And in speaking with her, it just amazed me that she was living as though she lived in a third world country. She would go outside, put her water in a bucket to let it heat up so she could wash her hair. And I just could not imagine living like that. Having to go outside, and she bought her water from her neighbor. So I'm glad we put him out of business, right? And the county where she lived is only less than 2 hours away from here, our nation's capital. And we have people living like that, 2 hours away from DC. And we serve a lot of people within this region like this. Our service area covers from Delaware to Florida, and there are in our 7 states, over 82,000 people living without indoor plumbing. Just in the state of Florida, there are over 24,000 living without indoor plumbing. And that's something that we don't talk about. But fortunately, through a grant from Chodo, we receive funds, home funds, to help people without indoor plumbing. We rebuild their homes. And so through that funding, we also look at if they're aging. We also have a program called Aging in Place, where we will make the doors wider, put ramps on their homes so that they can live and grow in the home and not have to go to a nursing home. We can go to the next slide. And this one is her home after we finished building it. But the true impact of this story is that not for me to tell you what we did for Alberta, it's for Alberta to tell you herself. So we brought her here. And she was very excited. Her video was really too long, so I had to just have a small clip of her video so she could tell you her story. If it's on there, okay.
Mr. Phillip, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Great.
I wonder if we could come in and chat a little while. We want to shoot a quick little video.
Okay, come on.
Boy, what a nice place. What a nice cozy home you have here.
Thank you.
Let's have a seat on the couch. There are a lot of folks out there that would like to hear about what you went through for this house.
Okay.
And thought we'd give them a little talk on what's been going on.
Okay.
I think this is good. So your decorations in here, yeah, I mean everything it's like a home.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you've
Like a
done,
real home that I've been looking forward to for the longest time.
You've done a great job.
Yes.
Oh gosh, and you've come a long ways. I remember when we first met, and you showed me around, and now look at what you have here. It's been a lot of waiting around, a lot of noise, a lot of digging and drills and hammers and well drilling going on, but it's worth it.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yes. There was the welcome sound that I enjoy hearing, because my old home, I love to see it go. People ask me, did I cry when he pulled it down? I said, no.
You keep talking. I'm going to show the folks some of the pictures of the old house.
I said, good riddance, because my old home, it gave me a lot of problems, and the roof was leaking so badly. I had to get someone to keep repairing it, but it didn't look like anything.
Uh-huh.
And my windows, more air was coming through them just as much as outside. And the floors were unleveled. And the deck Oh, that was
Yeah,
terrible.
we're looking at the deck right now.
Yes, and I just, every time I go out there, I was so afraid. And my son used to tell me, Mom, be careful how you go out there. And so, and I don't have to worry about water anymore. That's another something that I enjoy. I didn't have indoor plumbing.
Uh-huh.
And I had to walk to my neighbors to get water. And I even had to pay for it. And so now I can go to the sink and wash my hair. I thought about the other night when I washed my hair, I didn't have to heat water up to do it. I mean, it's a wonderful way to things this now. It made my life so much easier for me.
That's amazing. It's what you got used to, that way of living, and
Okay. I think that's it. We had to cut it. So if you want to watch it, go to our YouTube channel, SERCAP, SERCAP, and I will end with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope, John.
Okay, last but hopefully not least, John Niederman, President of Pathfinder Services. We're located in Northeast Indiana in Huntington, Indiana, which is a rural community of about 17,000, but we serve the entire rural and urban Northeast. And our organization is different from many organizations, but as you can see, we all have unique starts. Our organization started in 1966 as an association for retarded children, and then soon changed their name to Citizens and became Pathfinder Services in 1981 because the board wanted to serve more than just the developmentally disabled and wanted to serve the community at large. And so our name today emphasizes that, and we, over time, changed our mission statement and our vision statement to read as it is today, and that is to envision a community in which all people are accepted, regardless of abilities, and have control over their destiny, both their economic, social, psychological destinies. So that's who we are today. As you know, in rural communities, there are many individuals that we come across that are in poverty, and that they're in poverty through no fault of their own. It's just the economic circumstances that they find themselves in one way or another. And our story is of such an individual, a single mom. And I think we know many single moms, or maybe even single wage earner families, where they get to a situation where they find themselves homeless. And people say, there's no homelessness in rural. Yes, there is. It may not get the news like homelessness in urban areas get the news, but there are homeless people. And back in 1992, as we were searching for ways to fill the gaps in our community, and as we were beginning to really emerge out of our past of just serving the developmentally disabled, we began to search for other services we can offer. And one of the first services was transitional homeless housing, using McKinney Act dollars through HUD. And we were very fortunate to get the grant because we had the administrative capacity to get it. And so we began offering that. And Carrie is an individual who came to us homeless with her one-year-old child. And we were able to offer her up to 2 years of stability to get her life in some type of stable form through very intensive case management. And she took to it like a fish in water. She had an amazing ability to say, I want this, I want that, and she ended up using almost every one of our services because we filled lots of gaps. So I'll take the second slide. And there's that slide too. There's another slide.
Keep going.
Tom, I hope. There it is.
Okay.
And you can see the various services that she utilized, and that's what makes her unique, but it's the same for other folks in communities where we as rural entities, we have to fill gaps. We don't have the type of service provision that you see in some of the other areas, so we began to fill gaps, and you can see that she was in transition housing, and while she was in there, she also used our child care center, which has early Head Start. She used vocational rehabilitation because Carrie has learning disabilities. And so that's how we enabled her to get a job. And we provided job coaching for her to be stable on the job through our employment division. She took our financial fitness classes, our home buyer education classes, because she wanted to move out of poverty permanently by gaining wealth and assets. And we offer a variety of asset building services, of which homeownership is one of those. We help over 100 families a year buy a home in our rural communities through the 502 Direct program and other mortgage programs, so mainly the 502 Direct program. In fact, over the last 5 years, our organization has generated $436 million of economic impact, mainly because of our housing programs. As you heard our speaker before us, the good senator from North Dakota, say that's 25% of our economy. So you can see that she took advantage of that. She had an individual development account that we're able to provide for her. She had vehicle loan. We offer low-cost vehicle loans to get people out of predatory lending, because car loans, people can get preyed upon especially. And then we offer vital services because, as you know, EITC is so critical for people to catch up or to enable them, and they get taken advantage of so easily by some other tax preparers. So all these asset building programs she was able to take advantage of. And so today, Carrie owns her own home, $103,000 home, through the 502 Direct program. She now has 2 children and is doing very, very well and is building wealth for her retirement many, many, many years from now.
Well, thank you to our panelists, Mitzi Barker, Selvin McGahee, Hope Cupid, and John Niederman. Hope you all enjoyed that. So we're about to wrap up. I want to thank Moises and the HAC staff for hosting this event for us. It's a great venue for us to share the work that we all do, and I hope you get a little bit of a vision or a vision of what's to come as we face the 2015 budget and the 2016 budget, and so we got some challenges ahead. I'd like to ask all of you who are currently members of the Rural Housing Coalition to raise your hand. Oh, good, great representation. For those of you who didn't raise your hand, this is a great opportunity for you to join the Rural Housing Coalition and the work that we do. The coalition plays an important role in advocating for rural communities since 1969. We've promoted the principle that rural people have the right, regardless of income, to a decent and affordable place to live, clean drinking water, and basic community services. I encourage you to learn more about the work that we do and how you can get involved. While this year has been very challenging on Capitol Hill, as Bob said, next year proves to be even more difficult. We need your support. We need you. We need your dues for the work that we do. We need you to reach out to your legislators so that you can share the story and they can understand how important affordable housing is. So in the room outside, we've got our copies of our latest reports and information on how you can join the Rural Housing Coalition. So before we end, I'd like Bob and Sarah Michelson in the back to stand up. I'd like us to give them a big round of applause for the great work they do. Sure, Bob, you can say one thing. Before I pass the baton to Bob here, I wish you all a happy holiday and safe travels.
I do want to thank Tom for his service as the president of the coalition the last couple of years. He has been a great leader for us all. He keeps telling me he's glad that it's coming to an end, which makes me feel kind of bad. But Tom, thank you very much for your great help.
Are you welcome? Glad to do it.